Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Wolfram Language Design Review. We are talking about errors. And Leonid is going to tell us the latest on this.
Right. Thanks, Steven. So basically, I'd like for us to have a brief recap of the previous design meeting, where essentially there were two major requests or decisions made as a result of that meeting. We can basically look at the notes, but the summary is that certain functions had to be renamed.
Yeah, we got that. Yeah.
Okay. And the biggest stumbling block was that integration with the confirm enclose was not as tight as we would like to. In particular, confirm enclose with the error tag were using different error propagation mechanism from what we were suggesting with the new functions. And so I would suggest today to focus on this new integration mechanism that I'm going to present that hopefully will address this issue.
Okay. Can you show us again with the new, okay, so create a unique symbolic error type, register exception type. Okay. Define a function that can raise an exception. Okay.
Right. So this is a brief recap. Essentially, you first register a symbolic error type. Then you can use it in functions. And whenever you want to throw an exception, you just use throw exception of this type.
Optionally, so I understand, are we going to define some basic system exception types that people can routinely use without everybody's code having to throat clear with register exception all the time?
Yes, this is possible. This is also something that we wanted to discuss with you at some point.
Okay. I mean, I would suggest if we have, a few, like 3 or 4 generic exception types, like urgent exception or something. I don't know what the right terms are. And then, you can always register an exception type, but it's like, it's like you can do a lot of programming without defining variables.
Yeah. And because we have the type inheritance mechanism, it would also be possible to issue your own exception tag if you want. That would be a child of that one.
Good. Okay. All right.
So yeah, this is something for us to consider, obviously. Your suggestion about these standard types. Now you can use these exceptions in functions. And if exception is not thrown, actually, I'm sorry, this is probably, yeah. So if the exception is not thrown,
just executes.
It just executes. But if the exception is actually thrown, then it is, in this case, it is uncaught, but to catch it, you would need to use handle exceptions. And there is one more construct that is we suggest as a part of a framework, which is failure pattern. Although I have to say that it's not strictly necessary because you can just do this, and this will also work. But there are reasons which we can elaborate on why we introduce this failure pattern.
I don't understand how handle exceptions must be a hold subvalue type function if it's set up that way.
It is.
So it has a way of holding its subvalues?
Yeah.
I think right now it just evaluates to a function.
It evaluates to a function that holds the arguments.
But really it should whenever there's an attribute for this, it should do that.
We really need to build that. We have so many things that need subvalue holding. We really should build the subvalue hold mechanism.
Absolutely. Totally agree. But
so far, is somebody on that right now? Or is that, who can look at that? Is that a Tom thing? Is that who can look at building that?
Could be.
I think I remember Itai saying something about it. I think there was some discussion of it in LCC a while ago, but I don't know if it's
the deal is. Who's project managing here?
Currently, I am.
Okay, so if you can please track down who is, first of all, subvalue holding should be on GPL, And second of all, in addition to being on the project list, we should figure out who's going to actually do it. And if necessary, we should bring it up in LCC again.
Okay,
Make sense?
I will take care of it.
Thanks. Okay. All right. So just so I understand here. So it's doing faux subvalue holding.
Mm-hmm.
And I see. Not using the operator form, then it does.
Yeah, you don't have to use the
argument
operator
order?
form.
Is that the right argument order?
I think so, because typically, like expression in such functions usually comes first, and some kind of handling things comes second.
Yeah, I guess confirm does that type of thing.
It's like with cleanup or catch and abort protect and or check abort and things like that. The handling comes at the end.
Okay. All right.
Right, but we think also that predominantly people will probably use the operator form because it's so convenient.
Yes.
I think one pretty common pattern is also that you assign the operator form to something like you're gonna say like my project handle exception, and so you don't have to repeat the failure pattern all the time.
Absolutely. So you just do something like this, well, just with the failure pattern. And then you use handler from now on for most of your, whatever you do.
A small point, but which should be taken care of and should be done is the graphic design of that uncaught exception thing needs to be dealt with.
Absolutely. And in fact, we discussed it last time, and there were a few suggestions regarding this. So one thing was, like you said, graphic design. The other thing is Christopher suggested last time that maybe we should have a new cell type for the exceptions, similar to messages or some such. And then you also made a remark, Stephen, that maybe we should make the main loop catch that. So there are a few things to decide on uncaught exceptions.
Right. So one issue about the main loop is things that aren't using an interactive notebook main loop. What the heck do they do?
Well,
I mean, they do the same thing they do in an uncaught throw or with, a message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so why are we talking about a different cell type? What's the
I mean, that was something that we just came up the last meeting we had. Yeah, I think the idea, I don't actually totally remember, but I think it was basically that if there's an uncaught exception, right now it's hard to tell that it was an uncaught exception that went to the top as opposed to something that was just returned by a function. And so I think the idea was just that it could display with a different cell type.
And so what would it look like? It would have the output cell would not be an output cell anymore.
I guess so. I'm not sure we really seriously thought about this. Like, this is not implemented. This is just like an idea that came up in the last meeting.
Let's look at a syntax error. Could you just type in a syntax error? No. Just F open bracket without a closed bracket.
Okay.
Get rid of the closed bracket. Okay, now evaluate that cell.
Yeah, it gives this.
Right. I mean,
But
I
this
could
is slightly
imagine an
different.
output cell with a red lozenge or something on it. Because there's something different about that input cell once it has a syntax error in it. See what I'm
Here
saying?
it should be the output cell that's annotated, though. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm saying we could use that same kind of annotation approach for the output cell. I don't even know what that cell is. If you do, go to that cell and type Command-Shift-E. No, the cell, the error cell.
Yeah.
Cell with an error.
The output one?
No, the input
the
cell.
input one.
Input cell. Command-Shift-E.
Nothing. It's just normal.
So how does it know to do that?
So if you press Command-Shift-D again to change it back, it won't have the red bracket, maybe? I know it does.
No, it does.
Okay.
Okay, so we need to know what that mechanism is. I don't think anybody in this meeting will know. So let's find out.
Yeah, but you see, it's only the result of evaluation, Stephen. Unless I evaluate. I
know. So I'm just saying we can use the same general kind of approach, whatever that is, because it's a bit
Mhm.
mysterious, to deal with annotating if it is the output cell. And I kind of think it's going to cause us trouble to not have an output cell. I mean,
Mhm.
in other words, the only way we don't have an output cell right now is if the output is null, and then we simply don't display the output cell, but there is an output there.
Mhm.
I think there's going to need to be, out blah, blah, blah is going to be bound to something. And I would suggest that the way to do it is to have this, this level of annotation of an uncaught exception output cell.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Christopher, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing also is that you want percent to work. So
and to return and to give it that expression.
right.
Yeah, so I think there's many reasons why it should be an output cell, but we should find how the annotation works of those input cells in the case of a syntax error and do the similar thing here, I think.
Yeah.
That's my current suggestion.
I mean, with the current design, these exceptions are data of their own right. So when there's an uncaught exception, we could just print the message saying there's an uncaught exception, but then just return that exception object as the actual output, if that's not already what is happening.
I think that's what's happening. We're returning the failure object.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is
Right,
what's
but right
happening.
now it doesn't print a message along with it.
Yeah. And
If it
also,
did print a message, well, yeah.
also if you use percent of that, or if you use, anything, it will not work. So if I just do,
Because the exception will keep propagating.
actually, it works. That's interesting.
Well, I think you should understand it, but the exception is going to keep propagating. I think type throw of blah. Just do an uncaught throw.
Yeah.
No, not there, not there, not there. Just on a
Okay.
separate line. Let's just see what it does. I think it prints a message. Just type throw of anything. Just type throw of 7 or something.
Okay.
Just
It'll
type
do
throw. Okay,
yeah,
right.
hold throw.
Okay, right. So it generates a message and then it returns.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That throw arguably could be one of these failure objects as well. Instead of a hold of a throw, which isn't terribly
But that's
useful.
Steven, that's exactly what is already happening, because this thing is the result of 3-argument throw.
Okay, that's fine, but I'm suggesting maybe throw should be aligned with that. And, I think we should use the exact same pattern. If there is an uncaught exception that comes to top level, we should produce a message. Go ahead.
I kind of disagree, because I think that, right, this is something we talked about, I think, a bit last time, which is how does it integrate with throw and catch? And I think the conclusion was that throw and catch is a separate lower level thing. Like throw and catch is not being updated to support exceptions. It's the yeah.
I would mildly argue that hold thing should be reviewed. That there might be a better thing we could do there.
Maybe we can use a similar but not exactly the same pattern so that people understand that throws should be caught and exceptions should be handled, but they don't think that you can catch an exception or handle a throw.
Sure.
So they are similarly tagged, but not the same tag.
Right. Okay. I mean, a hold of throw there could come up with that same red, I'm an error output, which means it couldn't just be a hold there.
Right. I think that would be the thing, would be just have this throw, have this whatever coloring we have to indicate that it was thrown, that an exception was thrown to the top level. This should do as well. But that might be it.
There is one objection here, because if this will change the current behavior of throw, then it will break backwards compatibility.
No, it won't.
Well, no. Well, there's two things. The first thing is that it's uncaught throw. So basically, almost nothing can take in this output anyway.
Like a percent here below. I just show you.
No, I know, but it doesn't.
But
Leonard,
it's not many things depend on. But the other thing is
it's already broken. By the time it has an uncaught throw getting caught by the main loop, you're dead, basically.
Sure, fine. I'm just playing devil's advocate to make sure that, well.
But the other thing is we don't have to change the behavior at all, because we were just talking about changing the bracket or something, right?
Yes.
Like just making the bracket, but the output would be the same.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly, or okay. We could make it the same. If we indicate with a bracket, I think we're very okay with that. Okay, please go on.
Okay, so this was like a refresher.
Yep.
for the basic functionality.
Yep.
And now to the issues. So first issue was symbol renamings, and this has been done.
Yeah, okay, great.
Now,
Good.
the biggest issue was integration with the confirm enclose.
Yep.
And here is the status. We have a new design and working implementation that I'm going to show today.
Great.
The design, we kind of run through all the members of our working group. So there is an agreement there between all of us. And so to give you some idea generally how it works, basically the integration goes through the registered array types, which means for registered array types, we make confirm and close use throw exception, catch exceptions behind the scene, and basically reuse the same error propagation mechanism. For other tags, which are anything but registered symbol array tags, confirm and enclose keep working as it was working, and therefore the integration is only confined to registered symbol array types. Maybe later in the future we can extend it, but
I'm sorry, I'm totally confused. Could you go back? Let's look at the current functions that are provided here.
Yeah.
Okay, just go back to the. Okay.
You
Throw
mean
exception
here?
Okay. Yes,
Yeah.
the ones throw exception, handle exceptions, and what was the third one? Register exception.
Register exception type. Yeah.
Okay, which most of the time I'm hoping will be unnecessary because we're going to use, a few generic exception types. Now,
here, Steven, quick remark. Here I disagree because most people in practice will define their own exception types to confine to their own packages. And so it will be very, very much used.
okay, that's when people are building big packages.
Yeah.
They'll have, they need to contextualize. Do they need to contextualize an exception type?
Yeah.
Do they?
People writing packages are the main target for this improvement, right?
Right. But
if you
I'm
don't
trying
write
to
packages, you can forget about all of this.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to understand. If you're inside a package and you're throwing exceptions around, do we expect that within a package there is a context-based? I assume exception type doesn't have to be a symbol there. Is that correct?
It doesn't, but the biggest advantage of the framework is when it is a symbol.
Why?
You can also use strings.
Why?
Because first of all, symbols can be guaranteed to be unique just because they live in some context.
Okay, so there is a context play here. So we expect that in a serious package, there will be a context defined for the package, and which hopefully in the modern package format, and I assume this works nicely with the modern package format. Yes, was that
It's just a symbol.
Yeah, the modern package format doesn't change anything in the way this thing works.
Okay, but so then a typical pattern will be you start a context for your package, then you define an exception type with a name, with a symbol name, and then that symbol is localized to your package, and then everything just works.
Exactly.
That's the idea?
Yeah.
Okay. It would be nice to give people some, if they're going to be doing that for every frigging package, they're going to be defining an exception type. Do you expect that in most packages there will be one exception type?
No, there will be many, but there will be one which is root, and the others will be children of that root.
This is really analogous to when you define a message. It's like you could, okay, first of all, you could have a generic message that's, used across all packages, but that would be a very unhelpful message. You could alternatively have,
messages.
Sorry?
That's our general messages.
Right. But yeah, it is basically the general messages. But there aren't many general messages that get called from packages. It's very rare. Most general messages are just things where it wants to change the head between a couple of internal functions.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is it's like, right, so realistically you're going to define stuff for your own package, and it is actually almost exactly analogous to messages, because the main thing you're going to do when you register is basically say what the failure is going to look like.
Yes. What do you put in register exception type other than a name?
Well, you can also register the exception type, which is a child of some other exception type.
I see.
And I have an example. And there are some options, like you can define certain properties of these exception types.
Okay.
And
Wait, I forget, can you
Yeah.
Sorry,
go ahead.
can you tell it how the failure is supposed to format by default, like what message it has and stuff like that?
This is going to be this error translation layer, which we would prefer to not discuss today because we wanted to basically get this part with the confirm enclose integration done and then discuss it a little later because that can be built strictly on top of what is there now. So it wouldn't
that
change
has
any
to do with what messages are going to be produced that tell you that exceptions are happening. Is that correct?
Yeah, but that layer is sort of in the works. So this is
fine. And so there'll be something that is like echo exception or something that you can wrap around things that will determine how much exception verbosity there is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. We currently have this idea of the debug mode, but it can also it's kind of similar to that.
Okay.
I have an example of that, but
actually, I kind of like the idea of an echo exceptions. You know, where you just wrap it around. You know, at the top level, you say / echo exceptions.
And that does what?
Does whatever the debug mode does. It shows you what exceptions are happening inside.
Okay,
to
I see.
Silently doing them.
So you mean even if they're caught inside, it kind of shows you which ones were there?
Yes. Which is what I assume your debug mode would do too.
Well, maybe yes. So far, debug mode was confined with just giving more information inside the caught exception, but it could also enable things like that, I think.
But I don't know about this. I mean, the whole thing of like having a very visible system function that lets you turn on debug mode for whatever project uses exceptions is going to expose, first of all, who's using exception and who's not. And also, you know, maybe you put some stuff in the debug mode that, you know, might include passwords or whatnot, because, you know, you're using it for testing.
That's a different issue. I mean, that's something that's like, you know, protected and locked and so on. So, I mean, you know, you could have an option to register exception type that says, make this a secret exception. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, but even if it's not explicitly a secret, it could be also like maybe some details of the implementation that you actually don't want to share with the end users.
Okay. That's you know, it's like trace and things like this and stack traces and things. You know, right now, that's not something we're worrying about that much. You know, it's more important that the people who want to get this telemetry can get it than to prevent people from getting telemetry.
Yeah.
So
I agree
it's a separate
with that.
issue. I mean, we can have a wrapper that says basically hide which is perhaps a sensible wrapper. I mean, we have something for stack traces, right? That just says don't show this inside this, don't show the stack trace because it's going to be a big mess.
And actually, I have an example with stack traces here in this notebook.
Okay, fine. But what I'm suggesting in response to Carlo's point is that there be a wrapper that says something like, you know, hidden evaluation, or I don't know. That's perhaps that's a too you know, too judgmental a term for it. But something where it does not allow exception information, stack information, etc., to get outside of that. Does that make sense?
I wonder if there isn't something like that is turned on by default in Packlets, because when I load Packlets manually, I tend to see more stuff in stack than I do.
Well, we should talk about it. I think that's a good LCC topic, and I think, you know, hidden evaluation or something would be, or you know, I don't know what the right term is for it, but something where it basically switches off all that stuff. Once you've debugged it, you switch it all off.
Right, and technically it's fairly easy to do because you just need to use stack inhibit to hide all this stuff inside.
Yes, right. That was the thing I was remembering. Right. Okay, keep going. Keep going.
Okay, so basically, let me show you some examples because I think that will kind of maybe explain things better. So here we are registering two exception types. One is the parent, one is the child. So far, everything is kind of normal. And now we're using Enclose, which will already use...
Second argument should not require braces in register exception type.
Yeah, it might actually work without braces.
Okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm just making a comment.
It doesn't, but it should. Yeah, I mean, usually there's only one, so
Okay.
Okay,
right.
sure. This is something to change.
So it has multiple inheritance. It can have multiple.
It has, yes, yes.
Okay, all right.
Which,
Onward.
by the way, might be a way to both inherit from some standard exception and make some exception also local to the project.
I get it. I would suspect the standard exceptions will be string names.
Well, we
Why?
currently
Well, we could make them symbol names, but we have to invent them first.
for symbols, it's easier to document. It's one thing because you can have the
Yeah, all right, okay. Okay.
And also for symbols, there is less chance that they will collide with someone accidentally naming them the same way. So,
okay, fair enough.
Anyway, here is the call to enclose, which uses the error tag, but now it's a registered error tag.
I'm sorry. If we name them, okay, if we name symbols, I think you should come up with some suggested names, like something like, you know, I hate to use fatal exception, but just type it in, just for, you know, I hate to use that.
Most exceptions are fatal. Well, actually, that's not true. Uncaught exceptions are fatal, but
you know, I think there are, and what can we imagine are some standard exception names?
IO exception, for example,
Yeah,
which
okay,
is
good.
anything related to read-write, or something like connection failure exception, where you go to the web, but there is no connection or something.
Connectivity exception.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they should have long names. Connectivity exception.
And here
I would say it's probably file exception or
here.
input-output exception. File exception seems useful.
Could be also even this. Oh, sorry.
What does that mean? Because you can't write the file, or what?
It can be a generic thing where you can write either file or a stream, or you maybe, file doesn't exist also will fall into this category.
Okay,
So
I would imagine that file exception would also apply to things like you try and create or delete a file and you can't.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and so what other things there might be?
Well, there's the whole. I mean, one big class is errors caused by user input, right? So if there's something that
I see. So malformed
like
input exception.
Yeah, something like that.
Illegal. I mean, illegal is a stupid word, but input that is not of the form that is required for a particular function or so. Yeah, malformed, yes.
Either this or something with the arguments, like invalid arguments exception or something like that.
Right. Well, just arguments exception. Since you're calling it file exception, it will be, put a vertical bar on that one because it's a arguments exception. No, put a vertical bar after. No. I'm just suggesting after malformed input exception, a better name for that would be just vertical bar arguments exception.
I guess we can have. Right. We're kind of going toward the convention that it's a noun exception, as opposed to being, for example, an event or like like we have the noun is like what was the thing that had a problem with it, as opposed to it being an event or a verb
what
or
would be
something
some
like
event
that.
type exceptions?
But
it would be a read exception. Then that would be the verb form would be read exception. Or read write. If you do input output exception, the verb form would probably read write exception. Vertical bar. Put a vertical bar there. Read write.
Yeah, which I think is a much worse name in that case.
What are some other ones in addition to what about something like numerical route? I mean, bad algorithm exception, basically. I mean, I
Like
write down algorithm
overflow,
exception.
underflow.
Yeah, but I mean, algorithm exception. Algorithm. And then I would say numerical exception, numeric exception. No, it's not an alternative. It's not an alternative.
Okay. Numeric or numerical?
I think numeric exception.
I don't like algorithm exception seems incredibly broad.
Well, no, what that means is you asked for something that is, a matrix, you know, the inverse of a singular matrix or something like that, or you asked for, it means something like the algorithm can't get you there, as opposed to a numeric exception, which is like underflow, overflow type thing, I think. I mean, but remember, I just want to
Steven, so
give
slow convergence will also go to that, right? If the algorithm
exception, yes, I would
Yeah.
say so.
Mhm.
I mean, numeric exception means you actually generated a thing. There was a number, but the number was goofy. I just want to remind everybody that, you know, what we are doing with anything that involves error handling is kind of the secondary pathway. It's like there's code, it was supposed to do something. This is it didn't do what it was supposed to do, but it, you know, we're trying to, it's a big bucket we're catching things in. We're not going to get perfect behavior, but we're trying to do something. Anyway, these are interesting. All right, let's keep going.
Okay. So this is an example where you simply use enclose and confirm in the way they are normally used. You see there is some function, and then we confirming failed, so it should basically like throw confirm.
Sorry, Leonid, before you go on further, I think another big one is timeout exception.
Oh, yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah, certainly.
And memory exception.
Yeah, memory exception as well.
Well, I feel like that
What does
doesn't
memory
actually
exception
happen
mean?
much. I mean, you can do memory constrained.
Yeah, I would say
I've never actually
time-constrained
seen it. Yeah, I mean, I think in principle there is like a message or something for if you run out of memory, but I don't think I've
Sure, I
ever
get that
actually
message.
seen it.
Yeah,
Really?
memory. Yeah, I get that message. Memory constraint exception would be, I think, memory constraint, I would say.
I was more thinking of running out of memory, not running out of set constraint.
No, memory constraint T, rather than ED.
Constraint like this.
Right. And then time constraint exception for the previous
Although
one.
it does seem like, as Roman was saying, like you probably want this message also for when there's like that phrasing makes it sound like it only applies when you use memory constraint.
I know. So you want a different thing, which is perhaps the same thing, but I think it's, look, system memory exception would be my suggestion.
In fact, not all of these have to be separate. Some of them can be subtypes of others.
Yeah, I understand. System memory exception. But by the time you've got a system memory exception, you're pretty much dead.
I mean, we could have one that's like system exception. That's basically for kind of
it already
OS
exists.
Sorts of.
It's already exists.
What does it do?
The heck is that?
It is used for some things like, I think, actually, I'm not
It's not documented though, right?
Let me see. Yeah, it's not documented. But for example, one thing which will produce similar types of exceptions is when you do some iteration or recursion error.
Yeah, right. So that's a place where that's another thing we should put in here is terminated evaluation exception.
Yeah.
But then this brings up the question of like all these things like memory constraint, time constraint, and recursion errors and so on typically return. And so how do you switch them to a raising mode?
That's a good question. Let's table
that's
that
a much broader, yeah.
We probably would need a separate session devoted to the, to the ontology of these exceptions.
I mean, one way to do it is, doesn't time constraint, look at time constraint, look at documentation. It has a second argument, which is what to return. It just has a second argument there for the failure expert. So all you have to do is raise the exception in the failure expert.
Right. I mean, but and then happen to know that this is the exception that you should use. I mean, I think this is a much bigger discussion about basically, if there are existing functions that we wish had, used exceptions.
Well, I don't think we do necessarily. But as far as I'm concerned, I make a list of things. Some of them time out. I don't want the whole calculation to blow up.
Sure. No, right. I mean, yes. I mean, it may very well be that there aren't really any cases where we actually want them to throw exceptions. sort of
Right.
natively.
I would suggest something that is a wrapper that says not quite exceptionify, but you know, that you can put around, like the echo exceptions, you can put it around something and it says make these things that would normally have just produced failures produce exceptions. In other words, make this, you know, like a more critical piece of code where it's more careful.
I feel like that's going to be it'll be completely impossible to know what it's going to convert to use exceptions. And it's going to be so inconsistent.
I have already written this code multiple times, and I usually call it unhandle. And it's like, so for example, in Tabular, we're using all this in the top level code of Tabular, we're using the error framework. But when you're using an external facing function, that doesn't throw, it returns a failure. And so what you do when you say, I don't know, maybe cast columns under the hood, sometimes called transform columns, and you want, if transform columns returns a failure, you want to rethrow it.
Right, but
Okay.
Carl, this is completely different because it's the programmer who decides when and which to rethrow. Whereas what Steven suggests is the overall wrapper that kind of non-locally decides that from the outside.
Okay, so I'm suggesting, could you just write down a function name?
Sure.
But why would it be no
Throw
local?
exception on failure.
How would it work?
Open
Would
bracket,
it be
close
something
bracket.
like this?
Yes.
Well, I would probably second Christopher's concerns, frankly.
Okay.
I mean, I just think it'll be completely impossible to document. And it'll be the sort of thing where it's like, oh yeah, you know, the tabular functions support it great, but the, you know, I don't know, the data set functions don't or something.
The main
and then,
point is that this is a safety thing. It's like you put this around code where you really want to make sure that if the code something goes wrong, the thing blows up.
yeah,
Right,
I get it.
trying
I
to
get it.
soldier
I just
on.
think it's going to be very hard to
It may be.
sort of weasel out all of the, you know, all the random sort of functions that could throw exceptions, then make them throw.
I take your point.
No,
Yeah.
but
I just want to
I don't
reiterate
understand.
my claim that, you know, error handling is a secondary code path and it will not be perfect.
But
right.
like, I think there is a very much of a use case for a function like this, and it doesn't have to be non-local, because the point is so you have a function. That function might internally throw an exception, might use a completely different thing. What happens at the end is that it returns a failure. If you want to take that failure
Right.
and throw it, it's not gonna go deep inside that function and do weird stuff. It just checks if it's failure queue, rethrow it.
Well, but
I
maybe
see.
then the thing is just have a function that's
Throw failure.
right. I mean, basically it's identity
No,
if it's
it's
not a
throw
failure.
if
If it is an
failure.
exception, then it rethrows it.
Yeah, and
Just maybe you call that function, put a vertical bar after that thing. Just exception on failure.
but there's
Cool.
a version of this that I found very useful, which is like it checks whether A is a failure and B, the result matches some pattern or some predicate. So, you know, you want this to return either an integer, and if it returns anything but an integer, but including a failure, it either rethrows the failure as is or constructs on saying this was not an integer.
Well, that's
Okay.
exactly, you could do
With
basically, I mean, I'm
Well,
not sure how this is
confirm that.
integrated with the exception system, but that's very close to Enclose. Because you could have some, or sorry, confirm.
Yeah.
Because
I was going
you could,
you see, it's
Yeah.
just here. It's just in this example.
but that is
It's-
something that, by the way, we could do, which is, I mean, so right now, confirm, but not confirm by or anything like that. Well, it has a way of, if it sees a failure that looks like it came from a confirm, then it sort of propagates it without wrapping it again.
Yeah.
You can have something similar for exceptions. I mean, if it sees a failure that came from an exception, then it can keep
Absolutely.
propagating it.
And this is already I think this is already in place, exactly this mechanism for exceptions.
All right, let's keep going.
Okay.
Similar mechanism. Okay.
So basically, this is the standard use of enclose and confirm. The only difference here is that now it uses the registered exception type. And it behaves exactly the same way as before, so you don't see the difference, except the only way you can see the difference here is that it adds one more field, which we called exception failure, but it's open to renaming, and which just contains the internal failure object that the ErrorTools uses to propagate this. So let me explain. Enclose and confirm has a contract that the failure objects that Enclose returns is of a special, very strict form. It has always the tag confirmation failed. It has a message. It has a number of standardized fields. And we definitely thought that we don't want to change any of that. However, the internals that might be interesting, for example, extra error information, debug information, or anything else, they are stored in this internal failure that ErrorTools is using, that throw exception is using.
Okay, I get it, but I want to see what the user consequence of this is. I mean,
the user consequence. Okay, so so far here, this is exactly the same as it was.
Right.
However, now you can also use tag inheritance. So let's say you are confirming with this subtype, but you can enclose with the main type, and it will work. And this is something which confirm enclose usually doesn't do.
But it doesn't have. What does enclose? Normally, enclose, the third argument of enclose says what? It's what type of confirms to?
Yeah, it's a form that has to be matched. Typically, it's some error tag.
But that's when it does the non-lexical version of enclose.
Yes,
confirm.
exactly.
Okay.
We are only
it's
talking
basically the throw and
here.
catch tag. It's very close to being the throw and catch tag.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so one immediate consequence of this integration is that now enclose and confirm can get this tag inheritance, so that if they use this tag system with the registered tags, then you can use parent tags to catch all the confirms from the part of the child tags. So this is one user visible consequence, but there are more.
I want to see the integration of confirm enclose with. Okay, here we go.
Yeah. So now the next thing is that enclose is now able to catch exceptions which are thrown by throw exception.
Which would otherwise be caught by handle exceptions.
Exactly.
What's the difference between them being caught by enclose and being caught by? Does enclose have to give the error, have to give the exception tag to catch them?
Yeah, it has to still use the exception type to catch them.
So it can't just have a pattern. It can't just have a blank there to catch all exceptions.
Yeah, I mean, it can, but it will not. It will then work in a normal standard way of how confirm enclose works. So if we do it, it will. Actually, it's a good question, because in this case, it actually does not catch this exception that is propagated by this confirm. It's a good question whether it should.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, keep going.
Okay, so so this also works with tag inheritance. So basically, what has been done is that we introduced a new confirm type, which wasn't present before, which we called exception. So you can see the failure that is returned by enclose is a standard kind of enclose style failure, but now it has the tag is still confirmation failed as normal, but it has now a new confirmation type, which
I get it, but
yeah.
I don't understand. When should I use confirm enclose? When should I use exceptions?
Well, it's basically up to you if you want for some reason to use confirm enclose syntax. Because, for example, enclose has this function that second argument that can extract parts of your failure object, or for whatever other reasons, you can use it. You can also use handle exceptions instead, but then what you get is slightly different. So
okay, what's the difference?
The difference is that when you use handle exceptions with confirm, what you get back is not the like wrapped confirm style exception. You get just the inner exception that was thrown a little bit enriched by extra information that confirm produces here.
This is not helping me. I'm writing a big chunk of code.
Yeah.
Am I writing it with confirm and close, or am I writing it with exceptions? Why would I use exceptions as opposed to just using confirm and close?
For example, if you want to propagate this failure further, like rethrow it later, or
why
if
doesn't
you want
confirm does enclose not allow you to repropagate? I thought it had a mechanism for repropagation.
You can use, well, there's two things. You can use confirm to kind of repropagate stuff. Like if something returned a failure and you want to repropagate it, you can use confirm. Alternatively, you can use the tag mechanism, though it's a bit wonky, with confirm and close.
Okay, so let me see if I understand. Exceptions are by default. Okay, confirm and close by default is a little modular thing that operates locally, and is expected to operate locally, which is why, for example, the lexical form is common. Exceptions, on the other hand, are, by default will propagate outwards unless they will just propagate as far as they want. So in other words, the basic claim should be that confirm and close with their nice lexical mechanism are for doing small scale kind of errors you're going to catch very locally, whereas
Absolutely.
exceptions are for doing global errors that you fully expect might blow up the whole computation and return to top level. Is that a fair characterization?
At least I totally agree with that. Yeah.
What do other people think? Do other people agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean that's what we advertise. We call confirm and close local error handling, and then we have exceptions for essentially global error handling.
Right.
That
But
makes
Stephen,
sense?
yes, but because confirm and close also allow you to propagate essentially non-locally with the third argument being a tag.
I understand. I understand. But Leonid, if we're going to have anybody understand what the hell's going on, we have to give them some, anchor way of thinking about this. The
Yes.
fact that you can worm out of the local thing and make it be global is lovely, but it is not what we're going to explain to people, because otherwise they'll never understand.
I agree. And you very nicely explained, like your way of explaining it was 100% correct. So that's exactly what we should say, I think.
Okay, fine. All right. But the fact that there is a way to go from the local error handling mechanism to make it more global is good. That means there's no sort of seam in the middle of errors that are sort of intermediate scale that you can't deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is part of why of this thing. And then also there is this example here that with handle exceptions, you can do some more fancy stuff. So you confirm in here, but in here, you can basically decide based on which error is being thrown. You can kind of have the built-in dispatch that does different things depending on the what kind of error was there.
Okay.
Also, well, this is just an example which actually worked before. The only thing is, I should.
Okay, just say what the example is.
Yeah. So basically, it just shows that you can exactly what you mentioned. Also, the other it's kind of the other direction. You catch exception, and then you locally propagate with confirm and close if you wish for some time.
I see. Okay.
And the last thing here, I don't know if you want to look at this in any detail, but this shows you a bit more complete example with the debug mode. So basically here is a function func, which uses confirm, and it also uses throw exception in case if the arguments are totally wrong. And then it propagates through some other functions where how we call this. And then there is some public function which uses enclose. It could alternatively also use handle, but enclose wraps it into sort of user-facing failure standardized by enclose documentation. And so basically, when we call this function, normally without any debug mode on, you'll just get basically this confirm failure. But if you set debug mode on, you can get slightly more. This, for example, says that immediate failing function is func. And this is part of what ErrorTools does. And if you say show stack traces, it will do still more. You can see it lags a little bit. but then obviously the UI of this has to be changed. But the idea is that there is now a stack trace, and you can basically look at what went wrong.
Okay, let's talk about this in a moment. I've got another question first.
Sure.
Okay, it has to do with the propagation of exceptions and how high they go.
Yeah.
So for example, let's say I'm doing a parallel computation, okay, Roman, and one of the parallel kernels generates an exception. Under what circumstances does that kill the whole parallel computation? And under what circumstances does that just return something from that one subkernel?
Most of the time, the subkernel is a barrier for all kind of exceptions. There's one exception if you have generate an abort in a subkernel, it will abort the whole computation.
I don't know whether that's right. I absolutely don't know. That's happened to me recently, actually, and it was really annoying.
No, I mean, if you call abort inside your code.
I understand.
But I mean, there's no way to type Control-C in a subkernel, right? So.
Well, but for example, the subkernel could run out of memory.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes, then it fails. Then it fails, and the computation will not notice. I mean, of course, we can now talk about making that communication link between the master kernel and the subkernels handle some of these. So if there is an exception thrown in a subkernel that is not handled, and so it's an uncaught exception, then it could propagate to the master kernel, which could have a chance to handle it. So I think we have all the possibilities.
I think this should be parameterizable. Like there are some situations where you absolutely do want an exception from subkernel 2 to abort all other things going on. Because, you know.
And other cases where you absolutely do not.
Yeah, I mean, there are situations where you can actually use that as control flow. Like you're searching for something. There's no point continuing with the search with the other things you found it.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, one kernel that cannot proceed could just decide to quit, and the whole computation could still continue. I mean, you don't necessarily want that failure.
They're two different cases. We've agreed they're different cases. So similarly, remote evaluate could generate an uncaught exception that will or will not propagate through across the process barrier, so to speak. Right. So we just have to parameterize that. I'm just saying. I don't know exactly what.
This is a broader thing with throw as well.
Yeah, I mean, once we have this functionality in place, I mean, then we can start to deploy it. And
it's a good point. Should throw go across processors?
I would probably avoid that.
I mean, if it's uncaught, then it's kind of supposed to go as high as it can, and that would mean it should go.
I think it's not obvious. I think the default might be that it doesn't go across processors, but that there's a way to make it go across processors. Let me point out another thing that is long unsolved is timing going across processors.
Mm.
Right? If I say timing of a parallel computation, I do not get what I think I get. See what I'm saying?
Yes, I mean that would require just some machinery to make work. And
well, I know that, but it's not even obvious what you want, because I mean, do you want to multiply? Do you want the timing of all the CPU? Probably you do. Probably you want the sum of the CPUs of all the machines.
Yes, that seems reasonable. Yes.
But I mean, that's something we never solved, and we never solved that for. I mean, just to make it more difficult, let's say it's a compiled program that is. I don't even know. How does the compiler deal with timing?
With timing?
Yeah.
I think timing works just fine. I think timing also works in the compiler. I'm pretty sure.
But what about if you have an external program, right? You're using some library.
I mean, nowadays the new compilers, I understand, when you don't do anything else, it executes the compile code within the same process as the interpreter. So it will be included in the timing. But if you start a different process, then it's just like parallel computing. It's completely different.
Right. So we never solved that.
But if it's a library, then it's still in the process.
I see. So we've captured in timing. Right.
I think so.
That's probably mostly the modern world is mostly libraries. Okay. Let's just understand this debug mode thing. Okay.
Okay.
So what's the point here? The point is, what do you get?
You get extra information about the possible cause of your failure, which normally is not available.
But it's not displayed by default. It's displayed only if you worm into the failure object. Is that
yes.
correct?
Yes, but also the good thing about this debug mode is that it's set per error type. So it means that if you have a bunch of projects using this, and one project wants to debug what's wrong with their code, they set debug mode specifically for their type and its subtypes, where it automatically propagates, but it will not affect any other projects that use the same framework. So
I understand. I'm not. This design looks a bit uncooked to me. I mean, I'm just thinking here. The basic point is not showing stack traces; it's including stack traces. Right? There's
yeah,
no showing happening, right?
yeah,
But the main issue is it's less efficient if you're carrying around all this gunk, and
absolutely.
so you want to say whether you want to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm never a huge fan of this, sort of global setting of things. I mean, I'm much more of a fan of a wrapper because global setting. Go ahead.
I mean,
Yeah,
you could have a
just want
dollar variable and then you use block. I mean, that would be
yeah, I mean, one thing, Steven, about global setting is that exactly because this is per error type, this is much safer in that sense
I
because it
know,
will
but it's still ugly. I mean, why not just have a wrapper that says, debug evaluate
yeah, I
expert,
guess
comma, blah, blah, blah.
well, frankly, my gut feeling is that internally we might still want this to be stateful. Maybe I'm wrong here, but we can not necessarily expose that. We can only
Yeah.
expose the wrapper that you're talking about.
I mean, the problem with the wrapper is then to do debugging, you have to wrap your code. You have to change your code. And this doesn't change your code. You just set the flag and then you look what happens.
Yeah, but you can always wrap around your code call. So it's
Yeah, but
it's
you
a
have to
If
do
you wrap it
something and you
around,
have to, yeah.
right.
well,
But this is
we
a pretty lightweight. I mean, one could imagine something where somewhere in some, toolbar settings type thing, you can have a debug versus non-debug. But what is it exactly doing? It's just
what
allowing you in a failure object, it is preserving more information about what the state of the system was at the time when the failure occurred. Is that correct?
yeah, but it does a little more because it basically enables during the code execution, it enables it to um, grab that information. And
No,
so
I know, but basically what it's saying is an exception happened now. Look around and find the state of the world when the exception happened and package that up into the exception.
yep,
That's
right.
that's what's happening, right?
Yep, yep.
As opposed to when the exception happens, just know that the exception happened and don't have put out a big net and capture the state of the world.
Yep, exactly. And it also does certain things like formatting, stack trace, stuff like that can take some time. Potentially could also log things.
Well, that's the thing we want to do. And I think I would like to suggest, and I would like to get another discussion about this, the logging framework, because I think that deeply relates to this. Because to
Absolutely.
me, rather than having some crazy thing where I've got, screen after screen of gunk, I would like to have a log where I can, view it or process it. Because I mean,
Exactly.
if it was splurting out stuff and it's like, well, what actually went wrong? Well, I've got to go look for, I've got to spelunk the thing to find out what went wrong. Okay, can we in fact get a discussion of the logging framework? We had talked about this before, a with logging wrapper probably that says where to log things. Does that make sense? Anybody?
Yeah,
I mean,
although
Yes, but for
typically
version
logging
N
also.
plus 2, right?
what's that?
Sorry, go ahead.
For version N plus 2, not N plus 1.
Ah,
I understand, but I want to know what the design is going to be because I think that will affect what we do with this debug thing. Because I claim a lot of the debug stuff, you will want it to, okay, an exception happened, throw it in the log.
right. But personally, I think that logging framework largely can be orthogonal to this, but it has to be designed with this in mind so that there
I
will be
know,
some.
but,
Yeah.
but this has to be designed with a logging framework in mind as well.
Absolutely, which is why I
I-
mentioned it.
Yeah, right. Which is why we don't want this to be like just producing weird data structures that aren't interpretable elsewhere or sending messages that we don't have anything to do with.
Yeah, and also, Steven, there is another reason that in some cases the users will just encounter the error and there will be no way to debug because the only thing they could send us would be a log.
Yeah, I understand. Let's bring up the logging framework, please, sooner rather than later, in a ILD meeting or LCC. All right, this is looking good. Anything else we need to cover in this meeting?
Probably not. The rest, the other things, there are a few other things, but maybe we could relegate them to our next iteration once this is
Good.
done.
Okay, sounds good.
Are we good to go for the next version? And exactly with what can we do and what can we not do?
No, we're not going to reiterate the whole meeting here. We think we know what we're doing here, right, Leonid and
Yeah.
others?
Steven,
I mean,
frankly,
this looks good for the next version.
Yes, I think this looks good.
yeah.
I don't know about the debug mode. I don't think that's a thing. I don't think we're certainly not going to document it. It's not. I don't think the design is properly cooked yet.
Sure, I was just showing debug mode to show you just in principle why this is useful.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, it's like capture the stuff when the exception happens, as opposed to just knowing that an exception happened.
Yeah, and this also is one of the reasons why, like every team that switches to this error handling framework, once we have like even in undocumented form, and obviously when it's documented even better, they will
Sounds
get
good.
it for free.
Yeah, that's good. Right. Okay. Anything else? Right. Let's wrap it up. And I think those who are following live streams, we have another live stream coming up right now. Talk to you all soon. See ya.